My name is Tamara Morgan. I'm 23 years old. I work at Hunter College right now as a college assistant. I was born in Brooklyn, New York, and in Kings County Hospital. I was diagnosed at birth with osteogenesis imperfecta, which is brittle bone disease. Pretty much your collagen doesn't develop in your bone normally as it would in someone else, and so your bones are much more fragile. I didn't see myself so much of having a disability, so I would get hurt a lot, break bones from trying to play football and catch, and things that in hindsight now I probably would not be doing, but then you just want to be like every other child. Hi guys, which way is the cosmetic section?
Oh, okay, wait a minute. Baby, you need to go over here, right over here. Sorry. Right over here. It's a run.
I think two of my biggest challenges are getting around the city, in a timely, safe manner, whether it be by accessoride or public transportation. And then secondly, just finding affordable, accessible housing are my main two enormous issues right now that I'm trying to work out.
The specific mission of the Adaptive Design Association is to ensure that children, and eventually all people, would get the customized adaptations they need to participate fully at home, at school, and in the community. I'm Alex Truesdell. I grew up in the Northwest, and I went to college in Cambridge. I went to Lesley, and during my senior year student teaching, I was at the Perkins School for the Blind, and actually was there for almost 20 years. I was in the early intervention program. At that time it was called the infant toddler program, and it served children birth to 3 that had been diagnosed with vision impairments. It was clear that the babies needed adaptations they didn't have, and so it was more natural to adapt and fix. 6 months into that, my aunt had a spinal cord injury, and it paralyzed her fingers and thumbs. She lost the use of her hands.
I have been without hands for so many years and I can't eat an egg. How would you break an egg?
And she was very angry about it, furious about it, and couldn't imagine life without her hands. And I couldn't imagine life without her. And became crazed with the idea of fixing things so that she could in fact be as self-sufficient and happy and engaged as she could possibly be. She was not interested in any high-tech robotics, but actually really basic adaptations. And as she'd mention what she was frustrated about, I'd think about it. Luckily, my uncle, Uncle Frank, is an incredibly brilliant, gifted natural engineer. So everything we could think of, he could make. He made all kinds of things, and I was fascinated and hovered. And he said at some point, you've got to learn to make these things yourself. The more things I made and the more I talked to teachers and parents and therapists, they all had ideas that were generally nothing more than a fleeting wish, and they didn't have the tools, or they didn't have the time, they didn't have the skills. So in 1984, actually, I proposed to the Perkins School that we start a workshop. It would look kind of like Uncle Frank's basement and have all those tools in it. And it seemed an odd idea because I had degrees were in education and not in engineering. And so I pestered and pushed and ultimately was given a small space at the school. A professor from Boston University had said that the model at Perkins really should be everywhere, and said you've got to look for an opportunity. And so I was studying for a degree in collaboration, really in peaceable schools, and met people from New York who were trying to start a small business that would give work experiences to women who were somehow in an alternative to incarceration program. They were ready for work, but finding work following that is difficult. I had been looking for this opportunity and said, sure, I'd try. And so with very little money, moved to New York and started what was a project of another nonprofit called Creative Constructions. That's what we called the project. And that was in 1998. And in 2001, incorporated as an independent nonprofit, and have been here in this nice new space since 2006. I first met Tamara in this, I guess probably spring of '06, before we'd actually moved here, and got a call from one of her art therapy instructors who said that she was working with someone who was very hard to see.
I had been living on my own at Hunter College dormitory for quite a while, but I was experiencing being bumped into and almost getting hit by cars daily.
So she said we'd like to figure out how to get a flashing light that's high over her head. And that seemed awfully easy. So we did the first lamp, then actually got a brand new nice wheelchair that raises her up several inches. And the new company would not attach a lamp to her battery. They said, we'll just put lamps on the bottom of the chair. And she said, but I won't be seen, because that's just a few inches off the ground. And they said, well, we've never done this before. You probably won't need it because these are very bright flashing lamps. But she said, but I'm very short. People can't see me. This has been going on all my life. So they didn't do it. So she called again. She came, and Andrew Myers, who is the engineer in Florida that we found, he's a prototype designer, made a wonderful new lamp.
The light has been extremely helpful, beneficial to me, just because the normal frantic bobbing and weaving that I would have to do without my light doesn't happen with my light. When it's on, the light sort of resonates around the chair, so it's sort of like like I'm glowing, so everyone sees it. So it's made me feel much more safer, much more confident to go out. I'm not afraid, like, oh my God, I might get hit, I probably shouldn't go. And these were all of the things that I had to deal with prior to getting my light.
We actually thought, well, she's volunteering here regularly. She's joined Adaptive Design's Board of Directors in January because her use of adaptive equipment has been, essential to her participating, going to school, and now going on to grad school. So we asked her what else she might need.
I paint a lot and I draw a lot, and I pretty much would do it, but sometimes I would be uncomfortable doing it because the table that I'm using is like, 3 feet or 4 feet taller than me. So now I have a table that is cut out, around my wheelchair just for me. I have places for my paintbrushes and my water, and a huge surface area for my canvas or whatever else I'm using. So I'm really happy about that.
Cardboard is so great. Cardboard is so much fun. I first saw a cardboard chair in Bangor, Maine in like 1983, and I've not been the same since, because you can do anything with it. For many years it was considered totally weird. And the group in Boston, actually at the Children's Museum, wrote a book called The Further Adventures of Cardboard Carpentry. And I read that many, many years ago, in the early 80s, and I'm still aghast that everyone doesn't do it. It should be absolutely as essential as any other course in school. You should learn young how to work with cardboard. So we use thick stuff. It's 3 layers thick, and it'll support at least 1,100 pounds. The cardboard is very affordable. It's very universal. If you can't buy the triple wall, you can absolutely glue layers and layers of other boxes, used boxes, reuse them and layer them. Somehow we got really away from making things with our hands and separated out the people that make things and the people who think of things. Well, that's nuts. You should be making lots of things. So it needs to be edged and primed and painted and polyurethaned in order to withstand years of use. The cardboard is also wonderful because we can make mistakes and not get all upset about the damage to the earth, or we don't have to apologize. Cardboard is very user-friendly, and we don't want people to say, well, I don't have the right idea yet, I'm afraid it won't work. We just say, well, if it doesn't work, we'll make it again. Let's just try something. So we got a call about Raven in October of '07, and that was after a therapist, her occupational therapist, had been here on a continuing ed class she was taking, and said, I have a student I didn't ever read about in school. She has caudal regression syndrome. I've never heard of it, she said, but she travels on her hands. She walks on her arms. She gets everywhere. She's agile. She's an incredible athlete. She can shoot baskets and she can practically run. She can hoist herself up onto things, but when she sits on the classroom chair, her chin is on the table. And so it's not a functional position whatsoever. She can't write, and so she doesn't really like to sit still. So could you help us figure this out? So we did, and figured out how to hike her up a little bit so at least her elbows were on top of the table and she could see her work. And absolutely, that changed her interest in staying put at the table. As soon as she could see the top of her work, she wanted to be there. She's another one that as soon as we talked to her and to her mother about what other adaptations does she need, the list grew. How about at the bathroom sink? All right, let's turn this off for a minute. Just leave your hands. I'm gonna pick you up, and Greg is gonna add two pieces.
You want me to add 2 doubles or just 1 double?
No, 2. 2 doubles would be that's what we need actually. I think that way you can actually try the.
Now
you have to sit still up here. You know,
this is not very sturdy. How's that height?
Now you're actually.
Yeah, I was about to say we need to slide it back just a little bit.
Yeah. Now
Okay,
let's move
now you move
forward a little
forward.
bit. How does she get around and not be on the floor? And she doesn't see herself as a person who really should have the kind of wheelchair she has. It's not quick enough. It's not her. It seems to have a suggestion of more disability, so she'd like to have one of those fast racing chairs. So, and one of her favorite things is to get around on a scooter board. In August, we were lucky enough to have Raven and her mother spend a day here. And we had that same kind of question we asked Tamara, what would you like? What do you need? We made several things. And she went home with them. And a couple weeks later, her mother wrote a most wonderful email.
I just wanted to send you and your wonderful staff a thank you note to let you know how much we appreciate all the work that you have done making equipment for Raven. I wish I could show you how much of a difference you all made in her life. When she got the first piece of equipment to bring her eye to eye with her peers, it was a beautiful transformation in her attitude and in her overall being. She showed a confidence that bloomed like a beautiful rose. She became more vocal and felt more included with her class. It made her feel less different and special all at the same time. And I would again like to thank you all from myself, my family, and the bottom of my heart.
We have a society full of people that love to make things, love to design things, are happy to lose a few hours sleep at night thinking up something clever, and might even run out of things. And there are people that absolutely are in, I would say, pretty desperate need, but it's often never mentioned. So the mission is to make sure nobody goes without that, the items they need, especially in a world where we can make skyscrapers and iPods. We absolutely can adapt cafeteria benches and make adaptive paint tables. What we do here is really model what we hope is an effective response to a very big need, and to inspire a lot of replication, because we could only meet the needs of very few people.
Adaptive design to me is a godsend. You know, I feel that, I don't know, if I didn't have it, you know, I might have gotten seriously injured, you know, more than I could probably bounce back from. So I'm unbelievably grateful to have a place like this, and I'm sure that anyone that comes through ADA feels the same way.
Keeping the costs low will assure that eventually people will get what they need. If there's a big price tag dangling over the project, it won't happen. Even though it is the law for children in school, it may never happen that they get what they need if it's expensive. That people are afraid to mention these days anything that might cost, even if it would benefit a child. The idea that a person with a disability is someone else, we're also challenging that. We all have them, and we're embarrassed about it, or frightened about it, or worried we'll be criticized for it. Where in fact, this is a place where we kind of just say, yeah, it's pretty ordinary. We actually have to really collaborate or we make silly stuff. That the more we put our heads together, the smarter we are. And so to include everyone is really the essential piece here. And that maybe that is the part that has to do with being a little more revolutionary in a quiet way, that it's just not okay to separate and segregate and discriminate. That's got to stop.